Alright, the Celtics just put on one of their best performances of the year because the Clips have been ridiculous in their last 6, and the Celtics absolutely mopped them in their own crib, so it was obvious the Celtics were ready from the start. Defensively, they had the right game plan because it was predicated on either forcing Kawhi and James off the rock or forcing them into tough shots, and it showed in multiple aspects. First, they were having their bigs consistently show, blitz, or even outright switch against their screening actions. Then second, they were heavy in the gaps, so players were always ready to help and rotate on the backside. Then third, they were firing late whenever one of them were possibly going to get a shot off. And then fourth, they had the right matchups. As expected, Jaylen was assigned to Kawhi, then they'd have him and Jordan Walsh take turns depending on the Clips lineups. But the more important matchups were their bigs being assigned to John Collins and White being assigned to Brook, because those took away what James likes to exploit in his SNRs. If James wanted to go to his two-man game with Brooks, that just allowed White to easily switch onto him. So if he wanted to attack the Celtics bigs, he had to call for Collins as the screener. And by having White defend the corner, it also just allowed him to stay as the low man because the Celtics wanted to keep him there as often as possible. Even when Ty Lue recognized the matchup issues, especially in the second, and decided to keep Collins as the primary big, the Celtics just had to assign White onto DJJ or Dunn because those two were usually the ones filling the corners, so White still got to remain as the low man. The only quarter where the Celtics couldn't get away with their matchup assignments was in the third, because the Clips were using Zoom more, so they had to match big for big. And to the Clips' credit, they were able to exploit the backside advantage a good amount throughout the night. In the second, Collins and DJJ were consistently burning the Celtics for helping off their bodies. Then in the third, even Dunn had a couple moments of his own, and as those were happening, the Celtics could have easily adjusted, but they never wavered, so just as much credit goes to them, because by trusting their game plan, it eventually paid off in the fourth. That game plan discipline allowed them to force garbage time with 6 minutes remaining, because Kawhi and James never got going at all, so the Clips didn't have enough offense in the end, especially when the Celtics were rolling the way they were offensively, and that end of the floor was even worse for the Clips. Considering the way they've been playing defense during their win streak, I did not expect them to be as bad as they were, because they had many issues, and the most obvious one was their backside rotations. Nothing changed from their usual game plan, because they were just having their bigs show against all of the Celtics screening actions, but their help was getting lost in rotation, late, or just never there, so the Celtics basically got whatever they wanted. And the only aspect worse than their help was their raw containment. From top to bottom, none of them could stop their man, so any switching or adjustments to their matchups really didn't matter at all, and the Celtics could just easily find a cross-match in transition because they were playing with a lot of pace throughout. Every time they pushed the rock, they burned the Clips because they were able to catch the Clips defense not being set. So no matter if it was in the half court or in transition, they were constantly getting the same lays and trays, and all of those obviously just led to them establishing a rhythm out the gates. The only quarter I could somewhat understand the Clips struggling was in the second, because they had to go small with Collins at the 5, so they were switching everything with no rim protection, but that's not even an excuse when they've shown they can make the right rotations, and I think it just came down to an effort issue. They just let the Celtics move way too comfortably, so Kata was getting rolls to the rim, White was getting straight line drives, Ant was getting open looks from deep in the open floor, and Brown was having his way no matter what, especially in the second half, because in the first half, all he did was play within the flow of the offense. The big change was just the Clips' bigs levels getting lower, because they probably recognized they weren't getting help, so they naturally started dropping more, and that just allowed him to constantly get to his spots. But it really didn't matter who was in front of him or what coverage he saw in his screening actions, because there was nothing that was going to stop him, and he didn't even need to play during garbage time. So I respect Mazzulla for allowing him to get his 50 ball as the cherry on top. Just watch the tape.